Good evening, everyone. This is Geraldo Lemos Neto, and I'm here with the Portal Saber Espiritismo of Belo Horizonte, Brazil, doing the program to Know Spiritism. You are all welcome to study with me about Chico Xavier's life. Today is the program number 2. We talk about Chico Xavier early years last week, and today we're going to talk about the continuing of his mission. We are welcoming everyone also in the Discover Spiritism Network and everyone with the Portal Saber Espiritismo from Brazil and everyone from Kardec Radio in America. Today we are going to talk about the first psychographics that Chico Xavier received from his mother, and I ask my dear friend Marco Gandra to put the next slide, please. And Maria de São João de Deus, Chico's mother, would write to him, instructing him about his mission. And she wrote, "My son, here you are, here you have in my unpretentious letters the first impressions of my spirit in the afterlife. As much as I struggled, I could not be faithful to my descriptions of the aspects that form the environments of the spirit world. Objects and panoramas which are not related to the things known on earth are natural to remain unrelated to the understanding of man. And hence, the difficulty for the liberated soul to manifest itself with the goal of clarifying the earthly creatures." She is talking about how difficult it is from the spiritual world to explain the life beyond, the life after death, to ourselves here on earth. And it's understandable that we have some difficulty to understand about the life after death. And she was very protective of Chico at that time, remembering that she was the first spirit to communicate with him in the early stages of his psychographic mission that initiated on the 8th of July 1927. He was only 17 years old at that time, and he was just a young boy, right? And so that the spiritual world manifested itself through his mother to kind of a leadership to him in these initial stages. Eventually, all the writings, the psychographic writings Chico Xavier received from his mother were condensated in a new book, the second one that he published in 1935. The book is called Letters from a Dead Woman. In Portuguese, Cartas de uma Morta. And this text that I just read is in the preface of that book. As I told you, the next slide, Chico Xavier is initiated to psychograph in the 8th of July 1927, and 2 months early, it was 2 months after his first meeting. Please, one more, because he took contact with the Spiritism on the 7th of May 1927, when his his sister was in an obsession problem, and Chico's father, after trying to remedy her sufferings through the hospitals in Pedro Leopoldo, in Belo Horizonte, in Santa Luzia, all cities of Minas Gerais, he gave himself and the family of Chico the chance to know Spiritism through a couple from Belo Horizonte. That was Mrs. Carmen Peracio and her husband, José Hermínio Peracio. And they both came to Pedro Leopoldo and performed in Chico Xavier's residence a meeting of disobsession. It was a meeting where they prayed for the poor soul, the Chico sisters that was obsessed with bad spirits, and they prayed, and Mrs. Carmen Peracio saw that Chico Xavier had a great potential, mediumship potential, and then she asked him to talk to the spirits that were, obsessing, perturbing his sister. That was in the 7th of May 1927, and 2 months from that date, on the 8th of July 1927, Chico Xavier received his first psychographic message. It was a message of 18 pages, signed by a spirit that just wrote spiritual friend, but unfortunately, Chico Xavier did not keep that message, so we don't know the content of that message till this day. They also founded the first center, the Centro Espírita Luiz Gonzaga in Pedro Leopoldo, that was found on the 24th of June of 1927, and then they started the work. The next one, please. Marco. Yeah. So since 1927 in Pedro Leopoldo, Chico's hometown, Chico started to psychograph poems from Portuguese and Brazilian well-known poets that later in 1932 became his first published book, known as Parnaso de Além Túmulo, The Afterlife Parnassus, and that year was marked by the medium's adulthood. In 1932, Chico Xavier was 22 years old. The only manuscript from these early days of his first psychographics was found in Chico Xavier's personal archives after his death in 2002, and his family gave it to me, and I'm the sole keeper of these archives, and I published them as the first book of Chico Xavier in commemoration of his 100 years old in 2010. In Portuguese, the book is called O Primeiro Livro de Chico Xavier by Vinha de Luz Editora. In the sequence of his life, we can say that in 1931, Chico Xavier suffered his second biggest loss. The first one, as I told you in the first program, he lost his mother in the early age of 5 years old. Then his father got married again with Mrs. Cidália Batista, And she was a very nice second mother to Chico and all of his 9 brothers and sisters. And she herself had another 6 children with Chico's father. So the family was very happy. The family of 15 children, the mother, the father, and also the stepmother, Cidalia Batista. But in April 1931, she summoned Chico and told him that she was going to die. It was the 18th of April 1931, and in the next day, the 19th of April, she in fact left this world. But before that, she told Chico that she would ask Jesus to send him a guide, a spiritual guide that could sustain him. So after some days, in the 7th of May 1931, Chico Xavier saw his mentor the first time, the spirit of Emmanuel. For the first time, Chico was at Centro Espírita Luiz Gonzaga performing a meeting, a spiritual meeting at the Spirit Center, and Chico saw Emmanuel for the first time. The first time they didn't talk. It was just a sight. Chico saw him. But some days later, Chico, the first time that Chico Xavier got to speak with him, got to talk with Emmanuel, was under a tree nearby a water reservoir in Pedro Leopoldo, nearest river. Then his mentor Emmanuel informed him of his mission to psychograph a sequence of 30 books, and the Spirit explained to him that to achieve such a task, he demanded 3 very important conditions: discipline, discipline, and discipline. And after that, Chico Xavier accepted the task and started to psychograph those 30 books. It's very interesting because nowadays we know that Chico Xavier got to achieve the total of 525 books already published. So it was a multiplication of the first 30 books that he committed himself to receive. And we know also in my book on Chico Xavier, I wrote I put an interview that I did with Chico Xavier in 1987, when he himself told me that when the first 30 books were published and he thought that his commitment was done, then Emmanuel appeared to him and asked him to double the task to 60 books, so that he did it in 1959 when he moved to Uberaba with 60 books already published. And he arrived in Uberaba thinking of retirement. And also Emmanuel appeared to him again and told him, no, we are in a new hometown now, the Uberaba, with new friends. Now the task will be 100 books. So it took him another 9 years to complete his task, and he achieved in 1969 the 100 books mark of publishing. His 100 book was Poetas Redivivos, the poets that are revived, and published it in 1969. And so that Chico also thought that he was to retire. But that didn't happen because Emmanuel again appeared to him, telling Chico that he had an order from our dear Lord Jesus Christ. And this order were stating that from that time on, Chico Xavier's body was to be completely focused on the psychographic until the end of his days. He didn't have any more to say about his own body that was confiscated for the spiritual realm to persist in uh, his work until the end of his days, and he only discarnate. He only were to go to the spiritual world on the 30th of June 2002. So Chico Xavier was very much disciplined about this task, and he committed himself to it until the end of his very days here on earth. As I told you, the next please, Emmanuel, his mentor, revealed to him that in the time of Jesus himself, in the early stages of the first century, he was at that time the Roman senator Publius Lentulus, and his life is written in the book Há 2000 anos, 2000 years ago, and it was a very, very big hit in the publishing market in Brazil. And it was published in 1938, and he himself, Emmanuel, told Chico, wrote through Chico, that he would met with Jesus Christ our Lord in Capharnaum himself, and didn't get the chance, or he got the chance to see Jesus, to receive a call from Jesus himself, but he didn't perform this task. He just let it pass away, and he was very much in debt with this. In 1931, Emmanuel asked Chico if he was really willing to use his mediumship for Jesus, and Chico accepted the task. So from that time on, from 1931 on, Emmanuel himself dictated or wrote through Chico Xavier the total of 132 books, almost 25% of all Chico's psychographic work. We know nowadays that the Chico's discipline to the psychography, to the automatic writing, had up to this day 525 published books so far. So it was a huge task, and much of it was overseen by Emmanuel, and Emmanuel himself wrote 25% of all Chico's book, all Chico books. And in the next one, we're going to see André Luiz. In 1943, Emmanuel presented the spirit of André Luiz for the first time to Chico Xavier. We know by Chico Xavier himself that André Luiz's identity at that time was Carlos Chagas. And by the way, today is the birthday for Carlos Chagas in Brazil. He was a very known scientific researcher and doctor. Almost got in the early 20th century, almost got a Nobel Prize for his discovery of the Chagas disease. And he appeared to Chico Xavier in 1943, but he didn't want to be recognized, so he chose one of the names of Chico Xavier's brothers, the the youngest one, André Luiz, to sign his work. He started to write about the spiritual realm, the colony of nosso lar, our home, and everything else about the mediumship. And as a total, he dictated or wrote through Chico Xavier 37 enlightenment books that were responsible for 7% of all Chico Xavier's work, of psychographic work. We can say that he was responsible for the spiritist scientific perspective, writing a complete treatise of mediumship, stating aspects of the interrelations between the spiritual realm and our realm here on earth. Those collective works of André Luiz are very much important up to this day. As so, we know that nowadays many medical doctors are studying themselves the words, the predictions of André Luiz, and some of them very important that had been made known also through scientific works after 20, 30, or 40 years, confirming the affirmations of André Luiz through Chico Xavier in the 40s and 50s, afterwards, after 20, 30, or 40 years later. That's very important. You can see in the next slide also that mainly after 1974, after Chico Xavier stopped working only with FEB, with the Federação Espírita Brasileira as an editor, he perceived himself to have other publishing house working with him. So from 1974, the publisher of the Christian Spirit Communion in Uberaba, the Spirit Center that he himself founded when he moved to Uberaba in 1959, then they start to publish the collections of messages from family members that have returned from the frontiers of death to bring comfort and to talk to their loved ones here on earth. And soon after, also the Spiritist group Emmanuel of São Bernardo do Campo, São Paulo, known as GM, continues this new phase that lasted until the death of Chico Xavier in 2002, publishing books from the common people, the loved ones that were passed away through the spiritual realm and returned through Chico Xavier's psychographic mediumship to talk and to instruct their loved ones here on earth. So letters of young people who have died on car crash, motorcycle crash, or even drowned in the ocean in Brazil, they came. Also books, people that died in São Paulo's fires, tragedies at that time in the 70s. They all reporting their impressions in life after death, in the beyond, comforting their parents, their loved ones, their husbands and wives, and so on, and also those young ones that crossed to the other world so in an early ages. They alert to the young people of their own age about their responsibilities before life. those books of those missed in the physical realm, returning to bring peace, bring news about their survival beyond. It is an answer from the spiritual realm to the many questions about the process of death. Those books must be very carefully studied because they have very interesting aspects of the life after death. And I truly recommend all of you with it. In the next one, we can see the Chico's work nowadays. More than 6 grand movies were produced here or elsewhere in Brazil. Also comics books about Chico, his personality. As I told you, 525 books from his mediumship of psychographic or automatic writing. Also books of his psychophony, that is the mediumship to talk. Also books on his mediumship of intuition when he himself canalized the spirits through interviews, TV interviews or newspapers interviews. The books, as Chico used to say, the books are not mine, they are the property of those who wrote them through me, so that he never received 1 penny of money from these books. He gave all the copyright to the publishing houses and the charity houses that sustain the publishing and the dissemination of Spiritism in Brazil or elsewhere. His bestseller book is Nosso Lar, Our Home, from the Spirit of André Luiz, that nowadays has almost 3 million copies sold just in Portuguese. We know for a fact that Chico Xavier is the largest, has the largest Portuguese work in the world, and at 525 books and over 50 million copies sold all over the world. And nowadays he is versed also in 30 other languages around the globe. We have countless messages from discarnate spirits. One should probably state that almost 3,000 spirits have written or have given their messages through the mediumship of Chico Xavier. And he continues to work all his life, from the early stages of his life when he was a Catholic, Roman Catholic, and from his 17th year old to this death, after 75 years dedicating himself to Spiritism. He always continues to work with the less privileged on earth, the poor and the needed ones. Although he maintained his modest lifestyle as an exemplary government employee, he never received 1 penny even from all of his books. He gave it all for free, all the copyrights to the publishing houses. So the mediumship of Chico Xavier, in the next one we can just have a resume here. He had the physical phenomena with the mediumship of materialization of spirits and also healing. He had such a power, but those physical phenomena were not the focus of Chico Xavier. For instance, in the materialization, he only worked for 3 years. And relatives of mine and people that I used to know from União Espírita Mineira in the 80s and 90s that were present to those meetings in the 40s and 50s would tell me that the spirits were all fully materialized, enlightened, and it was amazing. But Emmanuel, in the last reunion, materialized himself and put and stop to those reunion because or those kind of mediumship, because he stated that Chico Xavier must give himself only to focus on the psychographic mediumship because of the spread of the word through the books. So Chico was more focused on the intelligent phenomena, which englobes the clairvoyance and the clairaudience mediumship. He could see and hear the spirits. One time in the 80s, he talked to me and he revealed that he himself could not make a difference between the ones that were on earth and the ones that were on the spiritual realm. He could see everyone through the clairvoyance mediumship and also the clairaudience, where he could hear them. He could talk to them, hear them, and see them. Also, he had the psychophony, the mediumship to talk, to speak, receiving in these obsessions sessions the ones in need, and also the spirits from the higher spiritual realm, giving them the instructions. And as I already told you, the mainly point, the most important point of his mediumship was the psychography, or automatic writing as you wish. Up to this date, 525 books were published so far. So we are in front of a huge work task performed by Chico Xavier after 75 years of fully dedication to the cause of Spiritism and to the cause of the Consoler, bringing us the gospel according to Spiritism, the words and works of Jesus Christ our Lord, again, in an easy way to comprehend, the way that we can now, in the 20th and 21st century, understand more clearly. Well, thank you for participating with me here. Thank you all from the DSN network, also from Kardec Radio Network, and also from Portal Saber Espiritismo from Belo Horizonte, Brazil. Here I am with Marco Gandra. Thank you for your time. See you next week. Bye-bye.